Rookie Hunter is proudly brought to you by the Wild Sheep Foundation. If you'd like to support their mission to put and keep wild sheep on the mountain, you can go to wildsheepfoundation.org to become a member, renew your membership, or become a lifetime member. You can even get yourself some badass WSF merch. All of that can be found at wildsheepfoundation.org. And while you're there, check out Sheep Fever, the official podcast of the Wild Sheep Foundation. Rookie Hunter continues to stay connected with Zoleo. If you're in the market for a new satellite communicator, go to zoleo.com, that's ZOLEO.com, and get yourself a satellite communicator you can rely on. And of course, we're partnered with our friends at North Arm Knives. The season will be here before you know it, so head over to northarmknives.com and get yourself a blade. Hey guys, welcome to episode 180. If you listened to last week's episode, Kelly brought up the episode we did with Brian Chan, and that was episode 33. That's going way, way back. So I was kind of nervous to listen to it, but Brian was a fantastic guest. He's such a knowledgeable and an interesting guy to listen to. So I'm going to repost that episode, and I hope you enjoy it. This was in the era of Skype. We used to use Skype to call our guests, and it wasn't ideal. So you'll hear some flaws, let's call it that, in the call recording, but there's nothing I could do to fix that stuff. So it is what it is. Anyways, sit back, relax, crack a nice cold beer, and enjoy episode 180 with Brian Chan. Hey, Brian, how's it going? Can you hear us okay?
I can hear you now, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Hey, Brian.
All right. Well, I don't know how much you know about Kelly and I. This is, we've been waiting to do a fishing episode for quite a while now. We focus quite heavily on hunting, but,
Right.
We're very focused on being outdoors in general. So I haven't done any fly fishing. I've spent a lot of time on the Columbia River and out on Kootenay Lake and stuff like that. But Kelly, on the other hand, is very excited about this interview and fly fishing because he spent some time out there and he's addicted and he's trying his best to get me out there. So it's going to happen this spring here. So we're both pretty excited to get out there. But
Perfect.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're lucky enough to live in this province. So it's pretty tough not to go out there and try to do as many things as you can. Fly fishing, for me, Mike and I started hunting about a few years ago, and I kind of started fly fishing at about the same time, just not as frequently. So I'm still pretty green too. But yeah, to have yourself on the show is much appreciated. You're pretty well known in the community.
We put out the word that we told guys that we had a fly fishing expert from BC, and we got like 5 different messages of people asking if it was Brian Chan, and so everybody's very excited to have you on. Yeah.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, so I guess the first things first, maybe we'll turn the mic to you so you can tell us about your background and experience as a biologist and a fly fisherman.
Well, I was very fortunate to have a father who was a very avid angler, and so I was hooked on fishing at a very, very young age, and that was fishing in the ocean, salmon fishing, basically fishing with live herring or herring strip down in the Gulf of Georgia out of Vancouver. And so the passion for fishing was instilled at a very young age, and I knew way back then that I wanted to do something with fish when I grew up. And so I was fortunate enough to get into finish high school and get into BCIT, and took a 2-year technical diploma program in fish wildlife management, and then got on with a federal government DFO for about a year and a half, working in various parts of the northern coast of BC, and then got fortunate to get a permanent job in Kamloops as a fisheries technician, working on small lakes, and went back and took a leave of absence after a year or so, and finished my degree at Simon Fraser University, my Bachelor of Science, and so allowed me to pursue a lifelong career as a fisheries biologist managing trout fisheries, or small lake trout fisheries, out of Kamloops. And so, and as I continued to work, my passion for fly fishing just continued at a rapid pace, and it was, as my wife said, she didn't know whether I was working or fishing because it was all the same.
Nice. Yeah, it's lucky.
Yeah, very lucky.
Yeah.
Very fortunate to have a career where you enjoy going to work every day. It's pretty hard to say that.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely. Actually, we should mention that we had Matt on from Rugged Point Lodge just for a quick 10-minute conversation before we chatted with you here. So he wanted to say hi.
Oh, yeah.
Sounds like you guys have met up a couple times.
Yeah, and we did a show in Pleasanton, California, a fly fishing show a few weeks ago, and then we'll see him in Kelowna, and then I'll be visiting Matt in the last week of September, shooting a couple episodes of Sport Fishing on the Fly, the TV show with Don and Dale Fresky. So we're really excited to do some river coho fishing with Matt.
Awesome. So what are you up to these days? Are you still in the biologist world, or are you?
No, I am supposed to be retired from that. I do a little bit of consulting, fisheries biology consulting, but more. I'm still quite active writing, guiding, and filming, doing TV shows, stuff like that, and that keeps me busy, very busy actually, and then I. Actually, not related to fishing at all. I kind of renewed my interest in hunting and have learned how to shoot a compound bow, and I've just gone crazy over that the last couple of years. And
awesome.
I find that extremely exciting, and a very similar challenge to fly fishing.
Yeah, for sure. Have you had any luck with the bow so far?
No, last season was my first real serious year to hunt, and I had several opportunities at both mule deer and whitetail, and actually took a shot at a nice 3-point whitetail buck, and 30 yards, and I had buck fever.
Oh no.
And after it took an hour to sneak up on him, and he dropped to his knees, and the shot went over his back. I couldn't believe it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was exciting, though.
Wow.
Very exciting.
Ninja whitetail, you saw it coming.
Yeah.
I should have, I made a few mistakes. He wasn't looking at me when I drew back, and then he just tilted his head towards me. And when I let the arrow go and he dropped, I could not believe it.
Yeah, there's something about whitetails. They're just ghosts.
Yeah, for sure.
Smart.
Well, exciting either way, and then you always learn something, right?
Oh, yeah. No, we had a lot of fun, and looking forward to the 3D season this year. So I'm trying to get in as many of them as I can. I like them. They're a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's something we need to do too, actually. Sounds like a blast. I haven't done it. Yeah.
Brian, we mentioned that you're going to be at the BC Interior Show this year.
Yeah, you bet.
I'm not sure I don't want to steal any of your thunder or anything, but one of the questions we had was what are your key challenges for fisheries of BC and kind of as we move forward with climate change and water levels and snowpack and all that kind of stuff. It seems like the amount of fish that are kind of moving upstream and are declining, and there seems to be a lot of trends that are happening and not in the right direction lately.
That's an excellent question, because things are changing out in our lakes, even our rivers, and whether you believe in climate change or not, or global warming, our weather patterns, short term and probably more long term, are changing, and we're seeing some very up and down changes in our weather patterns in terms of how long or how short our winter seasons are. And then when you compound or factor in that, at least in much of the southern and central interior regions of the province where some of our best trout lakes occur, we've had a lot of impact from mountain pine beetle. And the result of the pine beetle killing trees, and then subsequently a pretty significant harvest of trying to salvage those trees, it has had an impact on the watershed drainage systems that are affecting numerous small lakes. And so in lakes that have been heavily impacted by a lot more timber removal, timber harvesting, we're seeing a lot more nutrient loading in the lakes coming into the spring runoff, because we don't have as much of a buffer of live trees to absorb the nutrients. So we're seeing algae blooms in lakes that we never did before. We're experiencing changes in the species composition of aquatic plants that are growing in lakes. And we're getting lakes that are having some difficulty making it through winter. We're having some winter kill issues. And it all relates to the amount of runoff that's coming in. It's coming in faster, earlier, quicker. And it's got a lot of nutrients in it. And it is changing things, that's for sure.
Yeah, I noticed last spring it was there was a lot of snowpack, but it melted off in no time.
Yeah, really, really quick. So we're getting these very short, quick runoffs that just are sending a lot of nutrients into the lakes and creating problems later in the summertime with predominantly blue-green algal blooms.
Okay.
So things aren't, I mean, everything's changing all the time, but it doesn't help to have these, except for this year, we're more back to a more reasonable or normal winter and duration of ice cover. But the past 3 winters have been exceedingly early ice offs, month and a half, even more than what used to be so-called normal. And so, the lakes are ice-free longer. They're heating up. They've got a longer time to be exposed to the impacts of a blue-green algal bloom. And it's changing things. It's bringing on hatches earlier, although they'll be a little more normal this year. But I think anglers have to remember that everything in these lakes is driven by water temperature. So if they warm up quicker, the hatches happen, or insect emergence happen sooner, and also stratification happens sooner, and algal blooms come on sooner. So there's a lot of factors that go into the aquatic ecology of our lakes.
Yeah, one thing I don't know much about, but I find interesting, is sort of like the cycle of the lake throughout a 12-month period. And I think it might be different for different types of lakes, but like if you're, looking at a month to month, what is happening in the lake as far as the breakup of the ice, the turnover, and all that kind of stuff, and how does that impact everything in there?
Well, so we're specifically talking about the trout lakes that we like to fish up in the interior, and those lakes biologically they're known as or classified as eutrophic lakes.
Okay.
So these are shallow, a very shallow average mean depth. They've got lots of shallower littoral area. They have small creek systems running in and out of them, or often they're landlocked or only have seasonal flow coming in and going out, or not even going out in the fall, versus oligotrophic lakes, which are like Okanagan Lake, Skaha Lake, Shuswap Lake. the big lakes that have big rivers flowing in and out of them, they have limited shallow or littoral areas, and there's lots of deep water. So those two types of lakes are totally different from each other. We fish those small eutrophic lakes because they're shallow, they warm up, they're highly nutrient enriched, and the trout grow fast and have lots, and they can grow big in them. But having shallow water and minimal flushing rates where water is coming in and going out has its drawbacks. And all lakes, all these eutrophic, all these trout lakes that we fish, they do go through 4 seasons just like we go through. And right now we're at the tail end of winter on all our lakes in the interior. They're all still frozen, or except for the odd, very low elevation lake. There's a bit of open water on, but safe to say the 99.9% of them are still frozen.
Yeah.
So what's happening under the ice right now is we've endured 4.5 months of winter where there's been ice and snow on the lake, and there is no longer any photosynthesis occurring. So all that green plant life that grew on the shallow shoal or littoral zones of the lakes has been dying and decomposing all winter long. And during that decomposition process, it's been stripping oxygen out of the water. And there can come a point where there's so much what we call anaerobic decomposition of this plant matter that those lakes would run out of oxygen or not have enough oxygen to support fish life, which have the highest biological oxygen demand of living organisms in the water. So we can actually have a winter kill where the fish just physically run out of oxygen, and not enough for them. But there's lots for the invertebrates and bug life, but not enough for the fish. So what's happening right now is in a lot of lakes is the fish are not very happy because their oxygen levels are getting pretty low. What oxygen is in these lakes is very high in the water column, and they're kind of hoping, like we are, that ice off's going to come soon and they can basically get some renewed oxygen in the water.
Right.
So what happens is the lake, say it makes it through the winter, and the ice now does come off the lake. So at the day the ice comes off the lake, there's oxygen in the upper layers of water, but not down deeper. So the fish are kind of trapped in a very shallow zone of shallow water, and that's why fishing in lakes at ice off is always much, much better in very, very shallow water, because that's where the oxygen is. And the fish can't leave that shallow water and go into deeper water because there may not be enough oxygen from all the decomposition that's occurred during the winter months. So that's the scenario at ice off, and we can have some great fishing, but it's often in shallow water. And usually within 10 to 14 days after ice off, the water temperatures near the surface of the lake will become similar to the bottom temperature of the lake, and the lake will turn over, and that's called spring turnover. So when water is uniformly the same temperature and ideally at 4 degrees centigrade or 39 degrees Fahrenheit, the water will sink into itself. It'll sink through the water column, and you add a bit of wind and the entire water column mixes. So you might have had a very clear lake before the start of turnover, and hours later it's murky and there's a lot of detritus or decomposing plant matter suspended in the water column. That's a lake that's turning over. And what that turnover does, it allows the lake to mix, and the fish aren't happy when a lake mixes, because that narrow band of oxygenated water is now mixed throughout the water column. And so the levels drop of oxygen in the lake, and the fish are very dour. But 3 to 4 or 5 days after turnover, the water starts to clear up. A mixing still occurs, and now the lake becomes supercharged with oxygen from top to bottom, because the bottom waters are brought up to the surface, and there's an exchange at the air-water interface. And so ideally, after turnover, the entire lake is supercharged with oxygen, and that carries the lake through the spring and into the midsummer months. And so spring turnover is a necessary ecological event that ensures the fish have enough oxygen and all the invertebrates and other aquatic life in the lake as well. So those spring months is when we get the warming water temperatures, which drive the insect hatches, which the trout really focus on in our small trout lakes. But by about early to midsummer, it's getting pretty warm in the interior, and that constant sunlight and energy penetrating through the water, it warms those upper layers of water, usually down to about 5 to 7 meters in depth. You'll have the energy of sun penetrating down. And what will form during the summer months is called a thermocline. And that thermocline is an invisible barrier that forms like a sheet of plastic going across the lake. And it forms usually 5 to 7 meters down, depending on the clarity of the water. And that's telling you the maximum extent of sunlight energy. So if you've ever been on Okanagan Lake or Shuswap Lake and dove off the back of a boat and dove down, you'll go through warm water, and then if you go down far enough, you'll hit a layer of icy cold water, and you've hit the thermocline. And in small lakes, thermoclines get very well established, and they become a barrier to mixing, so that during the summer months, in a lot of small lakes, the wind can blow all at once, and it won't mix the water below that thermocline, which is established between 5 and 7 meters deep. And so in a lot of small lakes, there's not an accumulation or an increase in oxygen below the thermocline during the summer months. And so in some lakes, the oxygen levels may drop to a point where there's not quite enough for trout, and that's why they'll often see them on a fish finder. You'll see the fish stacked just along the thermocline where the water's cool and more oxygenated. We have to remember that trout are cold-blooded, and cooler water supports more oxygen, and trout are a cold-blooded fish species, and they need that cooler oxygen. That's why in the heat of summer, it's hard to catch fish in really shallow water on the shoals because it's too warm, and the fish can't come on there because water's warm, less oxygen, and although they'd love to be on there feeding, they have to wait till nighttime when the water temperatures drop on the shoals and drop enough so that there's more oxygen and the fish can come back on and feed. So our lake now has made it through the summer months, and then the fall months, air temperatures start to cool, and they'll cool to a point late fall where the warmer upper layers of water will cool down to meet water temperatures of the deeper depths of the lake. And when they get close to 4 degrees, again, centigrade or 39 Fahrenheit, the lakes will mix again with a heavy wind, and you'll get what was a clear lake again, just like in the spring, will become murky and for a few days, and that continual mixing of the water column will supercharge the lake with oxygen again to set it up for winter. You want to go into winter fully recharged with oxygen. Otherwise, you're going to run into trouble in terms of fish survival. So that's kind of that's kind of the 4 seasons that occur in a lake. And anglers really do need to understand that because it does dictate where the fish could live and where you should be fishing at certain times of the year.
Right. So spring is coming in quick.
Yeah.
Let's say I'm a fly fisherman. I'm going to go fish, I don't know, maybe some higher elevation lakes in April, May. I'm assuming if I show up to a lake and it's looking murky, I might want to go to a different one.
Yeah, if you show up at a lake and it's murky and your friends were there the week before and said, oh, it was crystal clear, we had great fishing, you got 2 choices. You go down in elevation and catch a lake that's already turned over, or you go higher in elevation and catch a lake that hasn't turned over yet.
Okay. So if I find a lake that either or, it's looking clear, well, let's go with the one that's already turned over.
Yeah.
What would be your key spring tactics?
If it's already turned over, you're going to be, and depending on water temperature, it's going to be in the mid to high 40s by then, or Fahrenheit, and into, so that's like 6, 7, 8 degrees Celsius. You may start to see the first cronmet hatch of the year, but what I would always start off with first is with a leach pattern. and I would be fishing the shoal areas, water less than 17, 18 feet in depth. That's where the fish are going to be. They're going to be in the shallow water because that's where the biggest grocery store is, from 20 feet of water or less.
Okay.
And it would be leeches. I would be fishing them under an indicator or casting and retrieving them on a sinking line of depending on the depth you're in. It could be an intermediate sinking line. It could be a type 1, 2, type 3, type 4 full sinking line.
Okay.
But what I wouldn't be doing is going out into the middle of the lake in 30 feet of water and fishing.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah, I'm still in the, I would call it the trolling phase of fly fishing. I'm going to try to take some lessons here on casting, but I find the trolling in some of these lakes, which can be difficult. What can people expect when they kind of move from that phase onto the casting and chronomid fishing? It just seems like the trolling can be very hit and miss.
Trolling can be very good at certain times of the year, but really, if you want to become an effective stillwater fly fisher, it means anchoring and learning about the different aquatic insect hatches that are occurring, and let the fish come to you, because many of these bugs that these fish feed on are not zipping around at high speeds under the water. They're very slow, and they're in shallower water. Oftentimes, shallow water, so shallow you couldn't troll through anyways. You'd be getting hung up on the bottom with your fly in the vegetation. So anchoring your boat and learning a basic roll cast with a floating line, and then putting an indicator on, and still just using a simple roll cast, you can catch lots of fish. In the majority of situations, you do not need to be casting 60, 70, 80 feet out. You're going to catch lots of fish if you can get 25 to 30 feet out from your boat.
Okay, so under the indicator, that's not just chronomids that you can kind of brush along the bottom. That would be leeches and anything like that? You can fish chronomids, you can fish shrimp, you can fish leeches, mayflies, damselflies, caddis pupa, all under an indicator extremely effectively. That might be the next step. I'll try that.
I mean, where the easiest way to build confidence, and when you're casting, anchored and casting, excuse me, is to fish during a good chronomid hatch.
Right. Because
that is the most abundant, diverse, and prolonged insect emergence, and fish in lakes, and fish love to eat them.
Right.
Because it's an easy food source and there's lots of them. And for the angler, it just means really you're still fishing. You're roll casting out or casting out with an indicator, and your chronomid is set below the indicator, so it's dangling down there a foot off the bottom, and you watch that indicator. Okay. And if you've got the right size and a close resemblance to color of what the real bugs are, those fish are going to come up and eat it, and you can catch lots of fish.
Chronomid seems like it's specific to just stillwater fly fishing. Is that accurate? And can we give just a brief description of what a chronomid is for folks that aren't familiar?
Okay, so first, chronomids live in both flowing and standing waters.
Okay.
The biggest species of chronomids will always be found in standing waters. And the more productive the lake, the more rich it is in terms of nutrients, and then in the benthic in the bottom substrate, the more diverse the species in both sizes and colors. So chronomids are midges, or buzzers as they're called. They're called midges in the States and buzzers in the UK. They're a two-winged dipteran insect that as an adult, the females don't bite. So the females, adult, looks similar to a mosquito, except they don't have a biting pointy proboscis to bite you. They are the most common aquatic insect living in our still waters. There's over 2,500 species of chironomids or midges that have been identified in fresh waters, flowing and standing in North America. And so that means they come in a wide variety of different sizes and colors. So we do have midge hatches that occur in rivers, and fish do feed on them, but they're often a very, very small, and they can be a challenge to imitate, but trout do eat them because there's lots of hatches. But there's 100-fold more hatches occurring in lakes, small lakes.
Right.
And the trout do gorge on them because there's not just a few of them emerging, there's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of them coming off at the same time. And the fish just go along and open and close their mouth and take in a few more every time they breathe. So chironomids have a complete life cycle: an egg, larva, pupa, and adult. The larva stage of the chironomid is often referred as a bloodworm because the larva species is often blood red in color, and hence the term bloodworm. But they most commonly either maroon or blood red in color, or they're shades of green or brown. And they live in the mud water at the bottom of the lake in the mud water interface. So they build little tubes at the bottom of the lake, and it could be 5 feet deep or it could be 85 feet deep. And they live down there, and they stick their heads out and they feed on detritus, decomposing plant matter, which there's lots of organic matter down there. And as they mature, they grow and grow, and when they're fully developed, by late spring usually, they'll seal themselves in their larval tube, and the larvae, which looks like a segmented worm, and up to about a inch in length, they will seal themselves in that tube and transform from that segmented worm into the pupa inside that tube at the bottom of the lake in 5 or 85 feet of water, anywhere in between. It takes about 7 to 10 days for the pupa to fully develop, and then it'll break out of that old larval tube and then slowly ascend vertically to the surface of the lake to hatch. And as it ascends, it traps gases between its body and its cuticle or its shock, and it gets shiny in appearance, gets very silver in appearance as it goes up through the water column, gets to the surface, and that's how it buoys its way up to the surface. As soon as it hits the surface, a split forms on the back of its thorax, and the adult chironomid crawls out, flies away, mates. Females come back that evening or the next morning and drop their eggs in the water, and they die. So the adult life cycle is very short. They don't feed. They have no feeding mouth parts. It's the larva stage that on some of the bigger chironomid species can be 2 years. In most species, they have a 1-year life cycle. So just imagine you're anchored on a favorite lake in the Okanagan or the Kamloops area. You're in 16 feet of water, and the chironomids start to hatch. All hundreds of thousands of pupa are breaking out of their larval shocks and elevating through the water column, all around your boat, all over the bay you're in. And the fish are going just swimming around. They can't swim away from them. These chironomids are helpless, and they just gorge on them. You have to remember that trout, any fish species, any animal, feeds so that it expends the least amount of energy for the greatest return of protein. And because they need their energy for other life activities. So for trout and chironomids, they just, as I mentioned earlier, open and close their mouth, and every time they do it, they take in a few more filter pupa through their gill rakers and down the hatch.
So what would be, I guess you have to watch the top of the water and try to find some shucks and match the color and the size, I guess. But what's your favorite chironomid pattern?
Well, it's like you just said, it's all about being observant. You've got to be looking in the water, and you'll see the pupa coming up, or you'll see their cast shucks, or you'll see the adults. And if you got a little aquarium net, you can dip them out of the water and look at the size and color, and then go into your fly box and see if you can match it. But overall, the most common chironomid pupil color is black, and we tie pupil patterns, so a black body with a red wire rib, silver wire rib, gold wire rib, or a holographic red rib or holographic silver rib. And the ribbing does two things. It distinguishes the segmentation in the pupil body, and if it's a brighter color, it adds a bit of flash to represent that trapped gas that's under its shuck. And so you can get very creative in your fly tying to get very realistic patterns that you have to think about. Well, if there's hundreds of thousands of real ones, why are they biting yours when it's got a chunk of metal and a sharp point hanging out of it? It's because it's close enough, or might be just slightly bigger, or it's moving slightly funny differently compared to the real ones, and the fish just come over and suck it in just like it's candy. And that's what makes it so exciting.
Interesting.
Yeah, this is fascinating. You're painting a pretty good picture of just the whole lake in general, from the bottom all the way to the top.
Yeah.
You get me excited, but I'm visualizing myself kind of showing up to a lake with my float tube and my fly rod and a big whack of flies, and just looking out the lake and having no idea where to start.
I was just gonna say that, like talking to Brian right now, I feel like a pretty good fisherman.
Yeah.
But once you're out there,
Yeah.
actually consciously putting all this knowledge into action,
Yeah.
it's kind of like golf, right? You get a golf club in your hand, and all
Yeah.
of a sudden you can't remember anything you read.
So that's what I was going to say is, like, obviously experience is the best thing you can have, but for somebody who's going out there without a mentor and with very little knowledge, what kind of advice do you have for somebody?
Well, I would take advantage of your local fly shop,
Yeah.
if you got one, and in your area, and you can certainly get good information from there and get set up with the right equipment. And there's a lot of good books, videos, YouTube videos that would explain a lot of things. And then you've got to, when you're on the water, you've got to watch, see where other anglers are fishing, see if they've got a floating line on and a strike indicator, and kind of figure and look at how shallow they're fishing, and if it's in the spring months and they're catching lots of fish, more often than not they're going to be getting them on chironomids, or at least you know how deep they're fishing, and so you want to be in similar type depth of water because there's obviously something hatching or some food source that's active in those often shallower depth zones. And so you got to do some basic deductions, by watching birds on the water, see if there's gulls or nighthawks or swallows all flying around and dipping down on the surface of the lake in a particular bay of a lake. Well, there's obviously an insect hatch going on and you need to get over there. Or if you get out onto the lake in your float tube, your pontoon boat, and you're looking around and the only place you see fish jumping or rolling around is in one little area, well, you better get over there because those are active fish. And even if they're not feeding those particular fish, there could be other ones that are feeding in that same general area. So you have to watch the environment you're in, look around, look for fish that are actively moving is a key point for anglers to consider when you're fishing lakes.
We get tons of emails, and a lot of them are related to gear. So somebody's thinking about getting to fly fishing for the first time. Obviously going to your local fly shop, like you said, is a good place to start. But what do you recommend for first time purchases as far as getting into the sport? You don't want to spend too much money if you're not sure if you're interested in it or not, but
maybe in BC.
Yeah.
But certainly for lake fishing, you can buy a fly rod reel loaded with backing and a floating line that's 9 feet long, and it's for 5 or 6 weight line. You can purchase all that for under $200,
Nice.
sometimes less than $150, and you're ready to fish. You just need some leader, some tippet material, and some strike indicators, and a small selection of basic chironomids and leeches and shrimp, and you're good to go. So you can get started relatively inexpensively and then grow from there, because you're never going to be happy with just one fly rod.
Right.
Yeah, I think people get intimidated going into their local fly shop. It's one of those sports. It's like fishing, but it's like the manual instead of the automatic version.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I can see how people be intimidated to go in there and talk, but I find most of the fly shops are more than happy to talk to you they'll sit there and talk to you for hours about fly fishing. They love it.
Yeah, and you have to start somewhere, but you don't have to spend any enormous amount of money to get started for lake fishing. Like I said, $200 you could get you on the water.
I've got another question about spring flies. Is a water boatman an option?
For spring?
Yeah.
Yeah, water boatmen and back swimmers, which are both air-breathing hemipteran insects, they survive the winter under the ice, even though they're air breathers, because the ice isn't like a smooth sheet of glass. There's air pockets under there, and that's what they live in all winter. Okay. So right at ISOP, there's always water boatmen and back swimmers flying around. They're happy to be able to get some exercise, so they fly and then they dive back down, and so they can be good as well. But usually you would normally put them on if you see them swimming in the water, or if you see fish boiling in shallow water and chasing something, very aggressive rises. If it's early spring, that's what they're chasing, water boatmen and back swimmers, because there are no big insects hatching.
Yeah, that was the one that always mystified me a little bit, but I haven't necessarily spent enough time out there to see a water boatman or back swimmer type hatch.
Yeah, well, they're active right at ice off early spring, and then they're again very active in the early fall when they go on mating and swarming flights, and the fish will gorge on them again. And when they're on boatmen and back swimmers, you'll see these massive rise forms and swirling, slashing activity at the surface of the lake, and that's a signal that should tell you that they're probably on back swimmers. And they could be anywhere in the lake. They could be in the middle of the lake, or they could be in 3 feet of water, because when the boatmen and back swimmers fly and drop into the lake, they could be anywhere.
Okay. Well, yeah. Before we wrap up, where can folks find you or contact you?
Well, I'll definitely be at the Kelowna show, so I'm hoping lots of Okanagan people will attend the Sportsman Show in Kelowna coming up in a few weeks, and I've got on my website, I've got lots of good articles on there at riseformflyfishing.com. I've got an archive of articles on how to fish, a variety of different techniques, and which is very informative. And if you go on YouTube and Google my name and fly fishing, you'll see lots of shows that I've done with different TV shows in around the area, and other tying clips I've got. There's lots of tying clips that I've done, fly tying, that are on YouTube as well.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Brett?
I mean, you got a lot of books and videos out there for sure.
Where are your books available all over? Because we got listeners all over North America. So have you got books that are available out there, or can they order from your website?
I've got, there's a couple books that are still available out there, but the one that it really has done well for us, it's a book I co-authored with Skip Morris and Chan, Fly Fishing Trout Lakes. It's currently out of print, and we're just getting another print going this spring, so hopefully we'll have that book back on the bookshelves in fly shops
Great.
and other stores this summer. And then I've got a 2-volume set of DVDs that I did with Phil Rowley on chironomid fishing, and it's called Conquering Chironomids, and there's 2 volumes, and they're available at fly shops, and it's everything you want to know and how to do it on how to catch fish on chironomids, which, as I mentioned earlier, is one of the best ways and most effective ways to fish lakes. Mm-hmm. Not only in the spring, but chironomids do come off well into the summer months. And even in late fall, when the lake's getting super cool and there's no chironomid hatches, you can still catch them on chironomids because they've seen so many of them during the previous 4 to 5 months that they'll often eat them late in the fall.
Nice. I can definitely vouch for the Fishing on Trout Lakes book. I picked up a copy of that on Amazon, just a used copy. Great book.
Yeah, no, we've got to get it back out there.
Perfect. Well, yeah, let us know when it's available. Again, we'll make sure we let people know. And we'll put links up to your site on our website. What days are you going to be speaking at the BC Interior Sportsman Show?
I'll be there Friday evening doing 2 presentations there. One is a PowerPoint presentation on, I believe I'm doing one on lake biology and how understanding it will make you a better angler.
Great.
And then doing a casting demonstration, which will involve casting tips as well as retrieves, how to retrieve your different flies. Perfect. And then I'll be doing a similar talks again on Saturday. So I'll be there Friday evening and Saturday, all day Saturday.
Good. Kelly and I will be emceeing on Saturday, so we'll be bringing you up on stage. We look forward to meeting you.
Yeah.
Yep. It's great. It should be a great show.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it.
I'll definitely attend the casting lesson. Should I bring my own rod or?
No, it's I'm just going to be. They've got a little area that they've cordoned off that you can. I'll just be demonstrating.
Okay.
How to cast, and certainly if I can get the rod in your hand as well there and give you some pointers.
Nice.
Perfect. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you there, and I'm excited to get on the water now, and we're probably going to have more questions for you down the road, so maybe we can do this again sometime.
Yeah, it's great talking to you guys, and look forward to meeting you down in Kelowna.
Yeah, you bet.
For sure.
Thanks for your time, Brian.
All right, bye for now.
Cheers.
See ya.
There you go, episode 180. Little dive into the vault. Kind of fun to listen back to those. But relevant information. That is useful information 5 years ago today. And I'm sure 10 years from now, that guy is he's a mastermind when it comes to fly fishing. And what an incredible resource. We should probably get him back on at some time, especially if I get into this a little bit more. But maybe I'll just get Kelly to interview him because Kelly's deep into the fishing. Me, not so much. But Kelly, when he gets into something, he dives in head first. So we'll see. Maybe we can get him to do some fishing content for us. But until then, support our sponsors, the Wild Sheep Foundation, Zoleo, and North Arm Knives. We shall talk to you guys soon. Cheers.